Okay, we're going to do it then. This is going to be a very comprehensive and meandering, no doubt, chat that is going to preview the Ashes in its entirety, which is rather exciting. Certainly for me, who's going to be in England throughout and doesn't have to toil around Australia and deal with all the stuff that you three are all going to have to be contending with over the course of the next few months. But welcome to Will Macpherson from the Telegraph, Dan Norcross from Test Match Special, Chris Millard alongside me, James Gregg, as always, for the Everywhere We Go podcast. Welcome to the podcast, gents. Big series coming up, high expectations. As always, let's do a little quick round robin then, and give me your initial mood for the series, Dan Norcross.
Right, my initial mood is that I am quivering with the anticipation of a chinchilla on his wedding night at what may unfold. I can barely believe I'm this excited for an away Ashes. I'm not sure I have been. I'm not sure I was this excited in 2010. And there's all sorts of reasons why, which we'll come to during the pod. But I may be about to sound really stupid, but I just get this odd feeling that the stars are aligning. To beat Australia, England traditionally have to come up against quite a weak Australia or be exceptionally good. I'm thinking 32-3. I'm thinking sort of 70-71. They were a very good side. The last time, actually, they regained the Ashes in Australia. The other times they've won since then, they already held them. And I think Australia are just plateauing or on a down slope with their age and whatnot, which we'll come to. And I think England are absolutely ready for this. They're not remotely scared. They're really excited. They want it. They're loving being slagged off. And normally England teams go into their shell when they're slagged off, but Stokes is kind of bring it on, I want more. So, look, I might sound stupid, but I think this could be one for the ages, one that we'll be writing about for years to come.
Chinchilla analogies aside, Will, how are you feeling?
I share Dan's optimism. I'd probably say I'm slightly more cautious in my optimism than Dan. I've been probably over the last 6 months or whatever asked my prediction a lot of times, and I think probably on the record you could find about 10 different predictions from me for a series scoreline. I don't know where I sit. I agree that Australia are like, they named that squad last week, 15 players, only one of them in his 20s, and even Cam Green, who's been around for a while. So they are a very experienced team. Old teams funny things can happen to old teams. You just have to look at England in 2013-14, who were a good side, who'd won the last, three Ashes series, I think, at that point, including that summer in England. So funny things can happen. I'm not quite confident over England, as I have to say. Like I'm hopeful, but I just don't know how we can know about England. There's been so little build up. They haven't played a test match since the very start of August, which obviously was like one of those games that kind of reminded you of the best of England and all the reasons they could win the Ashes, but also all the reasons they might not. So the other thing I'd say is that Dan mentioned there, the kind of retention dynamic with the Ashes. It is so rare to go to Australia and win them back. It's so much easier, if they held the urn, which they haven't done since they arrived in 17-18, win a couple of games, and you can be really confident taking it home. But this time, I think they're going to have to win 3, aren't they? When you look at this kind of sporting pitches you've seen in Australia, and that would be an incredible achievement for this group of players. But there are definitely reasons to believe that England can do it, and that it could be a kind of generational series for England.
Chris, you've been there for the last few weeks as we record this, right? So you've seen all these headlines every single day when you're going and getting your morning coffee. And, the average Joe one obviously did the rounds over here and all the other bits and pieces. And you'll have obviously read deeper than the headlines as well. What's the mood that you're getting? Because you're obviously talking to lots of people, not just general public, but also lots of people within the game as well. So what conclusions are you drawing from chatting to the Aussies?
Well, when I arrived in Australia, I promised myself I wouldn't get excited before the series started, and I was trying my best to not consume as much cricket media here and in the UK and keep very level-headed. But having been here for nearly 2 weeks already, I find myself firmly believing England are going to win 5-0, sheerly on surely on the basis of how, one, petrified the Aussies are for the first time in my experience of doing overseas Ashes tours of the England team and the style of the cricket. One, I've been into Triple M, which is notoriously a boisterous Australian radio station, and they weren't sure. They weren't sure about this Aussie team, and I think if the Aussie media, before they've played a test match, are already seeing the cracks, then I think it's really, really positive for England. However, I have allowed myself to get carried away, and I am firmly believing we are going to roll into that first test, win in 3 days, and we'll be on the beach on day 4. But let's see what happens. It's very, very exciting. The anticipation is unbelievable here. It's everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. All mainstream media are talking about the Ashes, and we're still a week away.
Yeah, it's starting to get a bit like that here in the UK. I must say, Chris, like, listening to radio stations that don't usually give time of day to cricket, and there's a little bits and pieces that are kind of popping up, and your non-sports presenters are getting excited about it because they know that every morning they're going to be filling their breakfast shows with conversation for the next few weeks and months. So that's good. It's the same here. I must say that. You talk. Let's kind of get into the minutiae then, rather than kind of pussyfooting around what may or may not we might be feeling. Dan, I want to pick up on something that you mentioned there about the and Will, you both sort of pointed towards this kind of aging Australian squad. Dan, you kind of said that they were kind of just maybe taking a little bit of a dip, bit of a decline, and England kind of maybe on a bit of an incline. That's an interesting kind of axis to imagine in our heads. So what makes you think of that particular kind of crossing of the graph, if you like?
Well, for a start, I don't think I can remember England going to Australia and Australia not knowing what their top 3 is. It's such an important part of playing in Australia is seeing off the new ball, because pitches I know they're a bit different nowadays. Australian pitches are a bit spicier, but it's still really important because that Kookaburra ball gets softer relatively quickly. And they don't know. They've got Khawaja opening the batting at 39. And we've all got the image of Mark Wood just bursting through him at Headingley and changing the series in 2023. He is a little bit slower, and he's very undynamic with the bat at the top of the order. So they don't know whether they're going to open with Marnus Labuschagne or Jake Weatherald, who hasn't played Jake Weatherald. So, he's an unknown quantity and will come into a high-profile Ashes series extremely nervous if he is up there. And that's going to depend on whether Cameron Green can bowl. He bowled a few overs, didn't he, I think, in a state game, but not a lot. So if Cameron Green can't bowl, then he'd bat at 3, and he's a completely inappropriate number 3 for me. He's a number 6. And they'd have Bo Webster from Deliverance in at number 6, sort of bowling his bits and pieces. So you don't know what that top 3 looks like. Then you've got the issue with the bowlers. So Pat Cummins, talking a good game, he should be right for the second test, if not definitely the third test. But he's going to come in without much bowling and off the back of an injury. Josh Hazlewood, their most significant bowler, does keep on having injury concerns, side strains, but with his back, that sort of thing. So can he make it through 5 tests? Scott Boland's myth is basically around taking 6 for 7 against a completely demoralised England team at the MCG, but was taken to the cleaners when he played in England. And Nathan Lyon, their premier spinner, averaged 40 last summer on their pitches, and they'll be forced to pick him because they have to. Oh, Gary, well bowled, Gary. Well bowled, go at 40 per wicket. That's absolutely tickety-boo. So I'm kind of seeing a team that isn't as settled. Yeah, they've got Steve Smith, generational talent. Yeah, they've got Travis Head, who's in decent nick, and they've got a good keeper in Carey, keeper batter. But I would say man for man, England's top 7, they know exactly what it is. Now that Jacob Bethel's kind of almost batted himself out of the side in the one-day internationals, they know that top 7. And that is a really good place to find yourself. And they also know that if Archer and Wood are fit, they're going to pick them. And if Stokes is bowling, and he took 6 for in the warm-up game, then suddenly England have got a much, much better balance than Australia and got a much more settled team.
And Greggy, that is exactly why I think we're going to win 5-0, because I keep listening to people like Dan, and I'm convinced it just keeps happening.
It's very simple, isn't it? It's a simple game.
Will, can you provide a little bit more a little bit more debate to the
Well, what
cause.
I'd say is that 3 months ago, I was kind of exactly aligned with Dan on that. We have this funny thing where Australia lost the World Test Championship final, and Cummins at the end of it. Australia tend to think in their cycles tend to be the WTC now, whereas England is still very much Ashes based. And Cummins kind of implied that they're going to need to have some regeneration. And then here we are, 5 months later, and they've got a squad full of 30-somethings. They've gone back to Marnus. Usman's still there. Weatherall is a 31-year-old, as is Webster, who was their kind of one of their more recent new players. The guys on the bench, Seamers, Brendan Doggett is 31. Sean Abbott, who's now injured, is in his 30s as well. Just like blokes in their 30s everywhere. Whereas Ben Duckett, I heard him say the other day, and it sort of took me aback a little bit. But he's just turned 31, and he's the fourth oldest member of England's squad. And I think we all associate Ben Duckett with still being a cheeky little kid. So it's a strange dynamic in terms of the age profile of the two teams. I think Australia would be absolutely mental to not pick the specialist opener, even though Weatherall hasn't played before. I think they've actually picked the wrong one. I would have gone for Renshaw, not just because he's an Englishman, but they picked Weatherall. But England would dearly love to see Marnus opening with Khawaja, because I think both of those guys could get in a bit of a rut, and then Green at 3 would provide great access to that axis of Smith and Head, who are like everything to that batting lineup. Marnus is in unbelievable form. He's not just kind of batting the door down. He's the 11. He's batting the door down back to his preferred spot. I think he has to bat 3, and then you've got to make a choice between Green and Webster. I found the clips of Green in the Shield slightly ominous as well. Like, he looked a bit leaner and a bit more dynamic when he was bowling. He's obviously always going to be an injury threat given his size and his kind of general he's kind of heavy footed, isn't he? He kind of lumbers in. He's always going to be an injury risk, but I thought he looked really good. Webster will be unlucky to miss out, but I think they've got no choice really unless Green pulls up injured. Green's just got that kind of higher ceiling. So it's amazing that a team can have many players alongside of 30, but this is a storied side. Like, they have won a lot. They've won almost everything, and it's amazing, really. One thing I love about this series is kind of as a prospect and a contest, is that it feels to me a bit like the end of an era, like a closing of a chapter of the Ashes. Smith first played the Ashes in 10-11. Khawaja played in that series. Root and Stokes were there in 13-14. Mark Wood played in 2015. There's just a lot of guys who've played so much Ashes cricket. Obviously, we've already lost Anderson, Broad, Warner, was like the start of that era ending. But yeah, it feels like this will close a chapter. By the time Australia come to England in 2027, I think their side it just kind of has to look very different because of the age profile of the team. So, and it just feels to me a little bit like this is England's last chance to beat these blokes. It's so important that they do that, just because if not, we'll look back on this era, this kind of a chapter of Ashes history, as like, it's going to be a full decade dominated by Australia, and that would be sad.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite parallel, isn't it, with the 2013 series, because that was an England side that kept on beating those Aussies, and then they came back and actually did it again in 2015, so they got a little bit of their redemption. Because England dominated the Ashes actually from 2005. I know they lost away in 06-07 and they lost away in 13, but they won a lot of series from 2005 through to 2015. And it's really, this Aussie chapter has happened from 2017, which was a mind-numbingly tedious series played on really flat decks where every game seemed to go to 5 days. Australia could have imposed follow-ons and didn't. And the cricket now is going to be completely different. So from the start of that era, when it was really Australia grinding England down and England having an inappropriate attack, you've now come round, you sort of flip things around 180 degrees, where you've got an England attack that feels right for the circumstances, that's young and is dynamic and is playing in a certain way. And that's partly why I think Chris is getting this sense that the Aussies are scared, because this feeds into an anti-narrative for the Aussies, right? When the English come, we're supposed to arrive like traditional colonialists, stuck in our ways, always playing the same boring, tedious cricket. And the Aussies are dynamic and exciting, and they're the ones that are making Test cricket fun. And yet we've turned up going, no. This is how you play Test cricket. This is way more fun. And the Aussies are genuinely offended by this. You have like really sensible, non-partisan journalists in Australia who have lost their shit, if you pardon the expression, over the way England have chosen to play cricket, as they see it. They think it's disrespectful. And this is basically what it is that it's not how Aussies perceive themselves and their relationship with England. And they hate the fact that the England team's the one that's exciting and fun and everybody wants to watch. And the Australians have got Usman Khawaja grinding out a 135 ball 42 at the top of the order, which no one wants to see.
Because it's been 2.5 years since that forgettable 2023 series. The kind of headlines of that series you can't forget, but the details of it do kind of fade in the memory. And one of the details is exactly how rattled the Australian cricket team and the nation of Australia was halfway through that Old Trafford test. And look, I know they got out of there, lost that series, not because it rained in Old Trafford, but because they were careless in the first two tests. That I accept that totally. But the Australians, like, even just the sense in the press box was just this like overall rattledness going round, where it was like, oh right, this is Bazball. This is what England had done to New Zealand. They'd done to Pakistan. They'd done it a little bit to Africa. They were doing it to the Aussies. They did get to that point. They obviously eventually drew the series. Australia haven't won in England since 2001. That was an important thing to defend. But it is easy to forget, because the Australians now just take the piss out of Bazball. They take the piss out of expressions like moral victories, the idea that the handshake drama with India in the summer, all those kind of things, which that the way they take the piss out of it is only loosely linked to the actual truth of what happened in those events. But that's fine. That's how the Ashes is a rivalry of great hypocrisy. Like that's what it is. We're hypocrites. They're hypocrites. But they were, at that point in that series, they were perturbed by the way England play cricket because England had found a way to make it work against them. Whether England will take, they won the third test in 23, didn't they? But they were 2-0 down, and historically Ashes history tells you being 2-0 down, you're basically snookered. So whether this time they cannot afford 2 dud tests at the start where they make silly decisions. If they hit the ground running in Perth, then it's absolutely game on.
Let's just take a minute away from the podcast for a message from one of our sponsors from this episode. It's actually a sponsor that I've been using since I've been in Australia, Greggy. It's NordVPN. We've chatted about them in a little bit in recent weeks, but I'm in Australia now, getting ready for the Ashes. You're in rainy London by the looks of it at the minute?
Yeah, it's a bit bleak. And I'll be doing that stupid thing, waking up very early to watch the cricket, listen to the cricket with Dan Norcross and the rest of the TMS team. But I mean, the thing is, when you're there, right, it means that you're not watching Wednesday, who are really struggling at the moment. So...
All right, mate. Don't rub it in. Don't rub it in. But there is the Steel City Derby coming up, isn't it? It's a big one.
You're right. How are you going to watch that? Are you going to use NordVPN to watch that?
I am indeed. I'm going to have to. It's the only way to make sure that you can watch the Mighty Owls beat the Blades. No worries about where we are in the league or anything, or the fact we're in administration. We'll bypass that completely to say that I will be watching it. It will be thanks to NordVPN. So I have been using it quite a lot since I've been on hotel Wi-Fi's, working, travelling and around on government Wi-Fi's in Victoria, Melbourne, where I am at the minute. So it just gives you that extra layer of protection when you're doing things like banking or you're doing anything online. It just gives you that little security blanket you need sometimes.
It is really good, isn't it? It's funny, I've kind of got my mum and dad on this as well, because sometimes when I'm going out on channels that aren't shown in the UK, they go, well, how can we watch? And I'm going, well, first of all, you don't want to, but if you're really desperate, NordVPN, and it's really easy, isn't it? I mean, you literally click on the UK, go on NordVPN, and it's like your whole, whatever it is, your phone, your iPad, your laptop, whatever it is, you can stick it. Just click on the UK, and it's like you're back home. Like you say, there's that Threat Protection Pro, which gets rid of all those dodgy sites and all the rest of it as well. So and I didn't know this, but every time I was on VPN when I was in America recently, it's faster because of the NordLinks thing on there. So actually, even if you're on a really slow Wi-Fi, when you connect to the VPN, it actually speeds it up. It's brilliant, really, really good.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I have noticed that when I've been doing it over here. So yeah, make sure you download it. Thank you very much to NordVPN for looking after us and looking after us on this tour as well.
Yeah, so if you can use the code barmyarmy, all one word, you get an exclusive discount, 4 months free, which is very nice. And if you change your mind, you've got a 30-day money back guarantee if you change your mind. So for you, Chris, it's great because you can watch Wednesday lose from the other side of the world.
All right, mate, you are rubbing it in now. I think there's a times when you can rub it in, but not right now, mate. But I will be doing that, and that's all thanks to our partners, NordVPN.
Yeah, well, that's that's a good thing, NordVPN. Very proud to be kind of on board with them. So now we've sorted your internet defence. Let's get talking about England on the attack down under. Well, on that, right, talking of hitting the ground running, just before we came on, I'm looking at this warm-up game that at the time of recording, England are, playing against the England Lions. They're fresh off the back of having arrived, having had a nice little white ball tour of New Zealand. Like you mentioned, Will, they've not played a test match since the start of August. And then I'm seeing clips of Steve Smith turning up in the state cricket. I'm seeing all these guys kind of steaming in, like you just mentioned, all looking fit, all looking firing. And I'm just wondering, everything about Bazball seems like it's so refined. Like you mentioned those early series where it was really exciting, and yeah, there was some sloppy errors made. I thought the India series in the summer. Look, we spoke in the I think on the final day actually, Dan, to you, didn't we? And it felt exciting in the sense that yeah, it was a drawn series. Yeah, India came away with that great victory in that Oval Test match, but it felt like they'd refined all the kind of rough edges. It felt like they'd just applied, ironically, a bit of sandpaper and just smoothed the edges out nicely. And I think that I'm now looking at the one thing that you could probably criticise England for, and that is maybe a bit of a lack of proper preparation. And that's the only thing. I agree with everything that all of you have said, but just from the outside looking in, it feels like they've not prepared properly.
Yeah, preparation is Sorry, Norky. The preparation's like a fascinating one because you look at Australia; it's relatively traditional. They're playing. They've got 14 blokes playing in the Shield this week. Now you see the risks of that approach because Hazelwood's been to hospital. He's been cleared a major injury by the sounds of things. But Sean Abbott, who was never very likely to play, but you never know, has been ruled out. England, meanwhile, have done things the England way, which they kind of very much see as the modern way. They under Bazball era. The tours they've gone on have been Pakistan, New Zealand, India, and then Pakistan, New Zealand again, up to this point. In all 5 of those series, they've won the first test. So their preparation, there is some method in the madness. The theory is that by not overburdening the players with heavy cricket before the first test, they might stay fresher longer in the series. Now, that hasn't always worked. They won in Pakistan once. They won in New Zealand once. They drew once in New Zealand. They lost in Pakistan once. They also lost 4-1 in India. And by the end of that series, almost every head was in every bush in India. So, it's not foolproof. Their theory is that, just keep it light. Also controlling the warm-up. So they feel like they can't trust Australia to provide decent opposition. Australia haven't even been able to provide them with a first-class venue. Provided them with I'm not there yet, I fly on Saturday, but Lilac Hills in a park, while the Wacker ground is being used by WA. Now, Harry Brooks spoken about the game today. He wasn't moaning at all, but he's saying, it's a slow-ish, low pitch at Lilac Hill, which probably won't have any resemblance. My colleague Nick Holt, I think, has written that they might as well be in a different state. They probably could be in England. The weather's been all right this November. that you can't, basically, local boards now cannot be trusted to provide the right kind of preparation. So England have sort of taken it into their own hands as much as they can. You look at the Lions side that England are playing, it looks fairly strong. Will Jacks is in the test squad, so is Jacob Bethel. They'll be facing Bryden Cass, Matt Potts tomorrow. It's all good stuff, but we just can't say for sure like how it's going to come out. I would have loved to have seen just a slight tweak to it, like maybe 1 2-day game and 1 3-day game. It feels a bit like to me. I'm not going kind of full Botham or Graham Gooch, and I totally also get why those guys, they used to go on 4 or 5 month Ashes tours. They can't get their heads around it. The other thing to say is that England were in New Zealand. Like, the management would probably say, if they came on this podcast, they'd probably say, we didn't choose to be in New Zealand. That's the schedule we were handed, and we've just tried to make the best of it we can whilst trying to win those games. They won one on the tour, I think, and lost 3. So England do it their own way. Australia is slightly more traditional, but also, you don't want to overrun your prize assets before a big series like this, because you want to get as much out of them as you can.
Let's be clear, no country gets really good preparation when they go abroad. I mean, India didn't really want to play against a bunch of counties because they knew what was going to happen. They were going to be made to play against Leicestershire or Derbyshire, and both those two sides would have rested all their first-team bowlers and played their second-team bowlers. So they don't actually want to do it anymore. And I get that. I mean, it means that there's a inbuilt advantage for the home side that seems to get bigger with each tour. But as Will said, England have bucked that trend because they managed to win opening games. And, Stokes was really adamant about this. He said, our preparation's been brilliant. You don't see what we do. And, Will will back me up on this, I'm sure. When England train, there's a lot of talk about them playing golf, and that's fair. They do, too much. But that's only because I'm just, I'm resentful of golf because it stole some of my best club players and they retired too early. So that's just something I've got to deal with. But honestly, when they train their arses off. I mean, you look at Stokes, he's a ridiculous specimen of a man. Ben Duckett, since he's come back in the England side, is physically completely different. They are in as good nick as they can be, notwithstanding that fast bowlers tend to get injured, often because they are training too hard. And I think that I think they've chosen the preparation that works for them. They've also been attuned to the time zone for quite a long time because a lot of their players have been down in New Zealand. That's quite helpful. Playing one-day cricket is a bit more like playing Test cricket nowadays than it used to be because you play so little 50-over cricket that actually, although England were pretty diabolical against New Zealand, someone like Jofra Archer was getting serious overs under his belt. He bowled 10 overs in every game. He bowled quite long spells within those 10 overs as well because Brooke was using him desperately trying to find wickets. He looked in really good nick. His speeds were really up. And that's all bowling. Just because you're not bowling in a test match, that is still bowling. And that is the modern way. It's the way modern cricketers have to play because of the absurd schedules that they're forced to do. There's a T20 World Cup within a month of this Ashes ending, which is kind of insane. How much prep are they going to get for that? How much prep will any players get for that? It's just the way cricket is played nowadays.
If you'd offered me, if you'd offered me at the start of the India series, if you'd said England will turn up for the first morning of that warm-up match in Perth with Jofra Archer fit, Mark Wood, Bryden Cass, Josh Tongue and Gus Atkinson all fit, and Ben Stokes also bowling fit, I would have bitten your hand off. So they've done quite well to get to that point, I think, in terms of their kind of bowler management, how they've kind of built them up. We'll see what Mark Wood's picked up a little hamstring issue in this game. Hopefully not too serious. The noises are that he might bowl on the third day. That's a bit of a worry, but even if he's not fit, you still have the other 4, which might be one too many for the first test anyway. So they've done pretty well. Let's see. A lot of the stuff happens behind the scenes now. They've had this tent at Loughborough with pitches that replicate Australia, kind of hard surfaces, and they've been pumping heat into it and all that kind of stuff. So we've just got to trust them, I think, and see what turns up on day one at Perth.
Just one other thing on the warm-up game. To me, the most interesting thing is that the Lions team has both Shoaib Bashir and Will Jacks in it. And the so-called England team, which we're kind of anticipating was going to be the 11 that they would go with, has got no spinner in it. And I think that's where we might like something substantial to come out of that game. Yeah, it could be a little niggle for Wood, but I think it's an indicator of how England want to go. And Stokes bowling so many overs and taking 6 wickets was in a way a way of saying, right, we could go in with 5 fast bowlers, because if Stokes can't bowl that many overs, then you kind of need a holding spinner, even though you don't really want to play him because he could get hit out the attack anyway. Whereas if you can bowl Stokes in a perverse kind of way, you can then afford to have 4 fast bowlers rotating, because you've got enough fat in the programme for 80 overs. That's 16 overs per bowler. One of them will probably bowl a few more than the others. Someone like Atkinson might bowl a few more. Someone like Archer and Wood will bowl a few less, So I think that's what we've got. I think Perth could be England going in with 5 seamers, and that could be relentless. Like when we think back to the West Indies teams in the 70s, I'm getting really excited again, the 70s and 80s. It wasn't that any one individual bowler was absolutely the best in the world. It was that as a batter, you were constantly facing bowling of over 85 miles an hour, sometimes up to 93 or 94 if it's Wood. So you get no respite. If England had got 5 of them and a fit Ben Stokes on a bouncy, lively surface in Perth, which I think last year Will started with wickets clattered in
17
no time.
wicket day one. Yeah.
17 wicket day one, exactly.
Wow.
So, this is why Chris is dreaming of a 3-day game and getting on the beach.
We might get it, Greggy. We might get it. But I guess we're excited about this bowling attack. It feels like it's coming to a head that we've been working towards for many years. And I think Will's right in what he said. It does feel like this has been the big project and the end of a chapter for quite a few players. I guess for me, I don't think it's going to be the likely heroes of Jofra or Woody as the standout bowlers. I'm leaning towards maybe a Class or a Gus Atkinson being the real guys that shine here. What do you both? We'll probably start with you, Will. What's your theory? Who's going to be the standout bowler for England, would you say?
Well, I think one thing about this bowling attack is I think it's easy to kind of sleep on it a bit and not, you can be, your eyes are drawn to England's batting lineup, but I think these bowlers generally haven't played that many games. But when they have, they've done really quite well. Bryden Cast was sensational last winter. He says he prefers bowling with the Kookaburra ball than the Duke's ball, which is really unusual for an English bowler. And I think that's one thing about this group of quicks that, last time England went to Australia, they turned up with a bit of a theme, to be honest. The attack was amazing, really. Anderson, Broad, Wokes, Robinson, and then Wood. And Wood, you'd say, was the only one of those bowlers who is chilled out about taking the new ball. The rest of them all would have depended, really, to be effective in Australia on taking the new ball. But not everyone can take the new ball. Whereas this attack, Josh Tongue, I don't think he'd be asked about taking the new ball. Bryden Cast definitely wouldn't. Mark Wood's not. You've got Archer and Atkinson as your kind of new ball guys. I think it's just nicely balanced. It's quite nicely laid out. There's been a bit of talk. I saw Steve Smith had a dig at England overnight, saying he thinks they've picked an attack kind of. It might be almost be too quick. It sounds silly, doesn't it? But they focused on pace over skill. But I think that's missing something a little bit about Australia still. There's 2 things. One is that I still think there's an entry level of pace to succeed in Australia at Test level. I still think, I love Sam Cook. I think he's brilliant as a bowler in English conditions. And I think he was unfortunate to play his 1 test at Trent Bridge this year. But I think if you're 80 miles an hour as your kind of top speed in your first spell and then dropping away somewhere into the 70s, I don't think that's going to do the business in Australia. Someone like Boland, he's not rapid, but he's still at 83. You know what I mean? Like there's an entry level of pace you need. Also, for all the talk about how pitches have spiced up in Australia over the years and the Kookaburra ball's got a nice new pronounced seam and it's been reinforced, all this kind of, there are going to be long periods in this series where Smith, Labuschagne, Green, people like that are just slowly grinding England down, and there's going to be long periods in the dirt between overs 30 and 80 where you need a bit of something different. And I do think that every member, possibly with the exception of Matt Potts, who I think is a really kind of reliable option if you need someone to kind of bowl all day for you, but with the exception of him, I think every single member of the team attack has got something different in terms of skill, whether that's pace or pure pace like Wood, or just a bit of nibble like Atkinson, and I think they're going to do it at a quick enough pace. So, yeah, I think it's easy to sleep on these guys. Gus Atkinson's got an unbelievable Test record. I think he was a real big miss against India this summer, and he came back in the final Test at the Oval on his home ground and took 8th. But I think he's a really big miss. He was a really big miss, and I think England would have stood a better chance of winning that series had he been available for even one more game. So I think they've got a lot of options. I'm pretty comfortable with where that pace attack is, even if Wood right for the first game.
Yeah, I mean, let's be really clear about something. When Steve Smith says that they're picked on pace and not on skill, Jofra Archer is one of the most skillful bowlers in the world. I mean, you've got to watch him with a whiteboard and see what he can do. He's got fantastic variations with virtually no change in action, and he's keeping his pace up as well. Atkinson, I don't know, I've watched a lot of him at the Oval, and he thrives when the pitches have got a bit more carry in them. And they're going to have more carry in Australia. The length that he bowls, and he bowls lovely wobble seam. You watch him and you're never quite sure how it is he's picking up all these wickets. And it's basically because he's not quite sure himself whether the ball's going to jag back in or hold its line or go away ever so slightly. And he's going to get carry. In England, he doesn't always get the carry. He gets the edges. He doesn't always go to the slips. It'll go to the slips in Australia. Yeah, I mean, Wood bowling 94 miles an hour is going to upset anybody. So Ben Stokes, we talk about skill. If he's available to bowl throughout the series, and you're talking about those overs between 30 and 80, the problem is going to be making sure that Stokes doesn't bowl a 12-over spell. But he can do, if absolutely necessary. But he can bowl 6, 7, 8 overs when the ball's 50 overs old. And he's a wonderfully skillful bowler. He bowled better last summer than I think I've ever seen him bowl. So the issue for England there is going to be, can he finish a series? Because he hasn't done for a while. But according to Chris, England will be 4-0 up by then, so it won't be an issue.
Let's talk batting. We talked about the headlines earlier on. Something really annoyed me, and I'm annoyed at myself for being rattled here by an Australian headline. But it's not just the headline; it's I'm an idiot for doing this. But reading through all the comments on Instagram and all that kind of stuff that you keep seeing, and obviously these people are generally pretty. They're just saying it to wind you up. I'm not going to call them stupid because they probably say the same thing about me. But talking about his average and the fact he's not scored 100 in Australia yet. Ponting averaged 26 in India. Kohli averaged 33 in England and 36 in New Zealand. Sangakkara averaged 36 in India, 35 in South Africa and 34 in the West Indies. Kane Williamson averages 30 in England, 33 in India and 21 in South Africa. I could keep going. If we're talking Australia,
this is really good. This is really good from you. This is like having Andy Zoltzman on the bloody pod.
Steve Waugh averaged 35 in New Zealand and 16 in Sri Lanka. That's the great Steve Waugh, right? Graham Smith, 39 in Australia and 35 in India. I could go on and on and on because I have gone through all the greats, people like Jack Callis and Chanderpaul and all these, right? The only person that I ever see this done this much to is Joe Root. And I just think this is a man who's breathing down the neck of Sachin Tendulkar at a very similar rate. He's chalking off hundreds for fun, test match after test match after test match. And look, the headlines that they're generating, goes back to Chris's original point right at the start of the podcast, that they seem to be scared. They seem to be rattled by things.
I think
that's exactly right. That's exactly right, and they are, because there is now no Australian who scored as many Test runs as Joe Root. I mean, there's nobody from any country, obviously, because he's the second leading run scorer. They're trying to get under his skin, and that's how Ashes series work. I mean, Will, you've done a few tours down under. You know exactly how it is. You arrive at the airport, and it begins with the customs bloke, and it ends when you finally leave that country, and everything in between is a massive wind-up. You don't get to go more than a few hours in Australia without them trying to get at you. And if you're the players and the media, I mean, again, this is something that Will can talk to better than me. Their media is almost coordinated. They've got wonderful tabloids, the Western Australian, what's the one up in Brisbane?
The Courier Mail, yeah.
The Courier Mail. And somebody's employed. They're not serious journalists. They're people who was in England. They would write for the Daily Star. We love the Daily Star, incidentally. I'm a huge fan. But the Daily Star doesn't aim to win any Pulitzers, right? These guys are much the same. They're trying to find funny headlines. Dud root. It's a double entendre in Australia, and they're going after him because that's what their job is. And I applaud them. I love it because one day, England win, and then you've got all those headlines you could throw back in their face. And that's why we're excited, because there is nothing more fun than sticking it to the people who've been sticking it to you.
I think just on Rooty more broadly, I was doing some research earlier this week for a piece about that kind of record that's going to come out. The piece will come out next week, but I was looking into his numbers, and obviously you mentioned the average of 36 is not too bad. Most players have a dodgy record somewhere. I think the main thing about it is that over the last 4 years, since England were last in Australia, that has become the only stick left to beat Joe Root with, the Australians, to kind of discredit him with. So in 2023, he scored his first Ashes 100 since 2015, when he was player of the series. I can't remember if it's official but in effect he was. He's gone past all these legends. He's scored 1600s, I think, since the last Ashes tour, which is just unbelievable. This is the one thing that he hasn't got in his record. I do think he needs it to go on 4 tours and fail to get 100 would be a real shame. Even if he's got 950s there, he's had a couple of agonising near misses. A number I found, which I couldn't believe, was that across his 3 tours, that average of 36 in total, no qualifications, every England player, no England batsman averages higher than that across those 3 tours. No one has had a better do you know what I mean? Everyone is so. KP, Cook, all these guys have been on those tours. Johnny got 200 in Australia. Stokes got 100 in 2013 in Perth. None of them have a better average than 36. David Milan, we thought he did all right in Australia. No, his average is 33 in Australia. That's how bad England have been in Australia in that time. Joe Root has been the best of a bad bunch. The rest have probably brought him down a bit. I think there's loads of reasons to be optimistic, by the way, for Joe Root. He's not captain anymore. He's coming in the best batting unit. 2013-14 was actually an unbelievable batting unit, but it did a seriously good job of falling apart on that tour, and by the end was a shadow of its former self. So he's coming in the part of the best batting unit. He's not captain. He's part of a team which is better led than and that's no dig at his own capacity, by the way. They just are more natural at it. I think there's loads of reason for him to be optimistic. And I would be, just like Matthew Hayden, I'm not going to make any promises, but I would be stunned if he hasn't got that 100 by the time we get to Melbourne for Christmas.
Well, he's probably got 10 goes at it, right, in this series. 10 goes at scoring 100. Maybe less than that if England obviously win by an innings at some point. But you look at that and you think, well, it's inconceivable that he bats 10 times and doesn't score 100, to me.
There is a reason, actually, and it is within his technique. When you think about Root, you think about the number of times it's not his get out of jail shot, but it's the shot that he plays so frequently, just to rotate the strike, is to go on top of the ball and glide it down a deep third or backward point, that sort of thing. The problem is with a little bit of extra bounce, he often gets undone by that. Sometimes it's edging through the slip, sometimes it's playing on, and also LBW is an LBW candidate. And with some of their bowlers, especially if he's exposed early on, while that seam is still hard and proud, ball jagging back from someone like Cummins, is a really, really dangerous ball. But the thing is, it's a dangerous ball for anybody. So when we're talking about Joe Root having specific problems in Australia, as Will's highlighted, everyone has specific problems in Australia, and that problem is playing against a generational bowling attack. Because Australia have, until this series, been able to get Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood and Lyon out onto the park pretty much every time. And they are exceptionally good bowlers. But now we're talking about a slightly different attack, one without Cummins to start with, one with a Hazelwood with potential injury problems, a Lyon that might be neutered by those pitches, and a Stark who's really getting on. So these are all the reasons why people are optimistic about how Root can kind of get rid of that hoodoo. The other one is not all the pitches behave like they used to. So the last time England were there, they'd spiced up a little bit, but I'm thinking the season before the go before that, 2017, they were dull as ditch water. They were pretty dull in 2013. It was only Mitchell Johnson was extraordinary and Ryan Harris. So somewhere like Adelaide, this is why I think Macca was going, before Melbourne. I would think Adelaide would be a perfect candidate for a Route 100 because that is one pitch that sort of it just screams Route.
I think he'll have one before then. Actually, now I think about it, but I think he'll be fine. I also like it's a funny one, isn't it? Joe Root is so kind of selfless, self-effacing, and he's all the noises he's made. He's had a microphone shoved in his mouth when he's got to Perth airport, and he's just saying the same thing he's been saying for months and months. This tour is not about whether I get 100; it's about whether we win the Ashes. And it would be fascinating his kind of legacy and the way Australians view him if he has a good series, averages 40 plus, but doesn't get 100. England win the Ashes. There's two buts. Like how he's seen down there, because almost that would be in a weird way that would almost be perfect, wouldn't it?
It would.
But they'll hate it either way because they still can't acknowledge that Jimmy Anderson was a great bowler and keep on calling him Clouderson. So, in a sense, I don't think anyone should really care about what Australians think about your legacy because they don't really mean it anyway.
Precisely what I was going to say. Yeah, hear to that.
Finn, winter has very much arrived in the UK. It's cold, it's miserable, but there is one benefit this year, that it's winter. That means the Ashes are back. And what that also means, as people can probably see by our very nice clothing and the clothing in the back, is that we are continuing our partnership with Budgie Smuggler. So they are the sponsor of this advert. So thank you again to the guys at Budgie for backing us and always getting behind us. And we're continuing the partnership, and that means that people throughout the Ashes series can still claim their 20% offer that we were running throughout the summer, site-wide discount. So no no strings. It's 20% off. It's site-wide. Obviously now winter months, getting on your hoodies, your fleeces. So it's sort of different kind of range.
100%. So if you're going to be up in the middle of the night, get your hoodies on, get your fleeces on. They've got a new underwear range. You need a package that gives you the ultimate comfort while you're tucked away here in the UK. And then if you are one of the lucky travellers that are going to Australia and going to be there in person to experience the Ashes, then make sure you get stocked up with the hot weather essentials. You've got the new Budgie cricket range, you've got bucket hats, you've got caps, you've got pretty much...
I mean, you've got some of the cricket range on here, and we've even got some of the Budgie Smugglers here. Now, we sort of agreed that we wouldn't put the audience through having to see us in the Budgie gear.
A gentleman's agreement.
Yeah. But the range is dead cool. They've got official England, official Australia Budgies.
Yeah.
Dead cool products for people that are a bit braver than me and you.
Yeah. And don't feel the cold as much.
Exactly. 100%. So people can get involved by this. Just use code BARMYARMY at the Budgie Smuggler website. If you head to budgiesmuggleruk.com, check out all your stuff. Or link will be on the screen, link will be in the description. It couldn't really be easier.
No, and valid for the whole series. So the whole time we're out in Oz, you can decide at any point, even if you're umming and ahhing, and you think, go on then, bye, Melbourne, I fancy myself a pair.
And even better is that we might, I've been allowed to say this, we might have some limited edition offers as well. So we might have some things crop up where it's other things. We'll keep it brief, but there's going to be some cool offers coming. It'll be dead good. So check it out, budgiesmuggleruk.com, use code BARMYARMY, get some of this cool gear.
You're laughing.
We could keep going on all day. We are going to end with some, and I know that you two are going to go, oh, really? But we want some predictions off you before the end. However, we'll do that just after. I'll give you kind of an any other business opportunity here. So kind of anything else that you would like to kind of point us towards, talk up, something that you kind of came on with your back under your arm, ready to kind of swing at. On this podcast before we go through some predictions. Dan Norcross.
I've got one, and it is Harry Brook. I think this is one
Ooh,
area in
interesting.
which England are a little bit complacent, and England fans, and I count myself in that as well. We kind of look at Harry Brook's record and think this is going to be perfect for him. I think I crunched some numbers the other day on his professional record in Australia. So mostly it's playing Big Bash League, right? It's diabolical. The average is in single figures. He's always really struggled on Australian pitches. And he hasn't played that much. It's not a big data set. If he has a really bad time, then that could result in England's middle order getting exposed rather nastily. Because you've got someone like Pope who we know is going to do the same thing. He's going to get 100 early on, and then they're going to kind of gradually work him out. He's going to get a little bit freaked out. Then he's going to move too far over to off stump. Then he's going to get bowled behind his legs. It shouldn't be a problem in the greater scheme of things, because they've got another Surrey man, Jamie Smith, at number 7, who's going to prop it up. But I think Harry Brook and how he gets on is going to be really interesting. If he can crack it, if he knows his game and understands how to bat in Australia early, then that is going to be a nightmare for Australia, because he'll come at them so hard. If they can get at him, that could be where Australia, I hate to say it, win the Ashes.
That's a good any of the business. Will?
Mine is way more positive than Dan's, and it's not about a specific cricket issue. It's about a wider matter to do with this tour. I was one of the few Englishmen admitted to Australia for the miserable 21-22 tour. It was a great privilege to be allowed into the country during COVID, but the tour was utterly miserable, not just on the field. I'm not a Stuart Broad voider. I don't think the result is null and void, but I do think maybe the nation of Australia wasn't quite as grateful to the English cricket team as they should have been after that tour, for coming to 5 different tests in 5 different cities at a time when travelling between them was really, really difficult. The number of COVID tests and the number of little tricky things that happened around that were mental. Remember Pat Cummins being ruled out of a because he was sat near a bloke in a restaurant who tested positive for COVID. Just unbelievable time. What an era to be living in. Anyway,
What a world.
we are like this is the return to normality tour. It's gonna it's the first time in 8 years where a proper battalion of England fans can get over. I know you guys are expecting thousands and thousands. It's going to be brilliant. I can't wait for that. Full stadiums, the ticket sales are unbelievable. As an event, I just can't wait for it. And I think actually the fact that all of these stuff are going after England, and one, it maybe shows that they're a bit nervous about what England can do, but more than anything, it just shows that Australia as a nation is back to normal after a tour which was as I say, it was just a tedious tour that never felt quite right. Back to normal. Ashes cricket in Australia. Here we go. I can't wait.
Love it. Chris, you're grateful for that as well, aren't you? More than anybody.
We are, yeah, absolutely. It's been 8 years since the last travelling Barmy Army contingent have made it over to Australia. We've got 3,000 booked on the programme. We've got 1,000 people coming to our event in Perth that Dan's going to be hosting. And we've got so much excitement, so much anticipation. I honestly think it could be, from a Barmy Army perspective, the biggest tour of all time. So, we're a week away and we can't wait.
Love it. Love it. Right, it's prediction time on the Everywhere We Go podcast. So we are going to start off with Perth, top run scorer, top wicket taker, and result. And then we'll do the full series.
And just to add in, we will expose you on social media, probably pre-test and post-test, so make sure it's accurate, all right?
This is coming from the man, guys, by the way, in Chris Millard, who will probably be predicting 5-0, root top run scorer in every single test match. Yeah. So let's go. I'll start things off, give you a bit of thinking time. Not that you guys need it, because you think about cricket far more than I do. Perth top run scorer. I'm going to give a Dan pleasing answer with Ollie Pope here. Top wicket taker. Look at that. I knew you'd be happy with that, Dan. Top wicket taker. Goodness, that's difficult, isn't it? I think Jofra Archer. And I think because of that, England will win the test match. Dan Norcross, are you happy with that?
Yeah, well, I am. I was going to say Ollie Pope because he traditionally gets his 100 early on, and Perth might be a little bit like the oval pitches that he liked when he was growing up. They've changed a little bit since then. So I'm going to stick with Ollie Pope. My top wicket taker is going to be Josh Hazlewood for the simple reason that England's bowlers are going to share the wickets around and get all 20, and Australia have got no one else who can take any wickets. So he's going to end up picking up slightly more than he should do, relatively expensively, as England run out victors by 8 wickets.
Nice. Okay, Will?
My top wicket taker is also Josh Hazlewood, and I'm going to marry it up with my top run scorer. I think I think Perth is going to be a tough test for the top order bats, and so Hazlewood I think might cause England some trouble in that Test match. But I think Smith is going to get an unbelievable 100. He looked he tired a bit towards the end of that India series, but he should be pretty fresh now. And he is, I just think he's a phenomenal ball striker. And I could see him causing, imagine seeing him coming out at 5 down. You think you've done the hard work getting rid of a top order, but then out comes Jamie Smith. I think I really fancy him. And I also, I think England will win the Test as well.
Okay. Chris Millard?
I'm not going to go down the same line. I'm going to go with an English bowler, an English batter to be ruling the roost here. Starting with the bowler, I am going to go with Bryden Carse. I think you're right. I just fancy him. I really fancy him for the whole series, to be honest. But I think he looked really good the back end of last year as well. So Bryden Carse, and then the batsman. For me, I think we're going to get a little surprise. I think Zach's going to come out with a big 100 to start things off at the start of the series. Just start with a really top of the order, bullying 100. When everyone wakes up overnight from the UK to watch that first day, England are 320 for 2.
Oh, look that. I hope that is right, by the way. I hope that's right. Right, we're going to do the series.
I want England to win the toss and bowl. I love it. I just love it when Stokes says we'll have a chase. I just think that's the best.
Yeah.
That's the coolest line you can ever have at a Test match toss.
That also would be quite nice, actually, because then you're not disappointed after one day of a long winter waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning. Okay, let's do the series then. We'll do it in reverse order. So, Chris, I want you to start first. Top run scorer, top wicket taker, and overall result.
Yep, top run scorer Joe Root. I think he'll really come through in those middle Test matches. Ooh, I'm gonna back him all the way. Bryden Carse, my bowler for the series, and England to win. It's going to be really tight. It's going to be close, but I think it would probably be a 5-0.
You couldn't say anything else in your position there, could you? Really? Wow. Okay. Good stuff. Will?
I fancy Ben Stokes to be England's leading wicket taker.
Oh,
nice.
I think he's the likeliest to play all 5. He was brilliant in the summer, and I think he's bowling as well as he ever has done. I think run scorer. I despite what Dan thinks, I really fancy Harry Brook to get some big runs on Australia. I'm a bit worried about the big grounds, but I think he'll come out like he has in New Zealand quite often. I know it's much smaller grounds there, but just counter attack if England are in a bit of trouble. There'll be a lot of gaps on these big fields. If he can just be mature enough not to take on the short ball every single time it's bowled at him, I fancy Brook to have a good series. I can't see Australia winning 2 tests, fewer than 2 tests. So I'm going to say England 3-2.
Nice.
very reasoned. Very reasoned. And Mr. Norcross?
Well, the leading run scorer is going to be Joe Root in an act of terrific redemption, in which he's going to get 300s, 680 runs across the series, as England win it by 3 matches to 1, having lost in Brisbane and drawn in Sydney because it all pissed down with rain for 2.5 days. That's my series prediction. And the leading wicket taker, I'm going to stick with Josh Hazlewood for the reason. It sounds unpatriotic, but the reason is, it's actually a good reason. It's because I think England have got so many good bowlers, a bit like that West Indies side in the 70s and 80s, that they will spread those wickets around. They will rotate their fast bowlers at various points. I expect Josh Tongue to come in, for example, and pick up about 12 wickets of people batting from 7 to 11 at various points, because England have got that Hoover, the mop, as they call him, to take that lot. Whereas Australia don't have a great deal of depth in their bowling attack. They're going to need Josh Hazlewood to bowl a hell of a lot of overs, and he'll end up with 21 wickets in a losing cause.
Nice. Well, in which case, I'm kind of going to echo your predictions there, Dan. No disrespect to either Will's or Chris's, but I agree with the spreading about of the bowlers. There'll be a bit of resting in there as well. I like the Stoke shout because he's bowled brilliantly. Chris and I have said this before. He's bowled fantastically well in this last summer. But yeah, and then it's got to be an England victory and route to get some kind of redemption. That's what we're all hoping for, and it puts him on track to go past Sachin for that home Ashes series in 2027. Then, if that kind of current rate of scoring continues, as Dan talked about the last time that he came on. So there we have it, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being part of our preview podcast. You are all heading out there. The podcast will continue, and that is going to be a very good listen. All the colour coming from Australia. Do follow the Telegraph articles that Will writes. Always brilliant, always enjoyable. Do listen to TMS at silly o'clock in the morning. And Chris, well, looking forward to hearing you from down there as well. Give your 2 pennies worth on just how much fun you're having with the Barmy Army. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you. I can't wait. I cannot wait.
Good stuff. Guys, thanks very much for listening. And remember to follow all the Barmy Army channels. England's Barmy Army on Instagram, the Barmy Army on Twitter, and all the rest of it. For now, see you later.